Divrei Yamim, Beth, chapter 17, Yod Zayin. So, Divrei Yamim Beth, Perek Yod Zayin, chapter 17, Pasuk Aleph. We're speaking here about Yehoshafat HaMelech, Melech Yehuda, king of the Judean kingdom. Yehoshafat was a very special king. He's highly praised after his father Asa. It says here, "Vayimloch Yehoshafat benot tahto vayitchazek al Yisrael." So Yehoshafat inherited the throne from his father. Vayitchazek al Yisrael, which means that he was a very active king. He had many plans, as we're about to see. He had an army which apparently he increased in size, and he placed troops in all the walled cities and fortresses. وَيْتَنْ لَصِيVِيم بَأَرَسْ يهوذا وَبَعْرَ إِفْرَايِم أَشَرَ أَخَذْ أَسَى أَبِيهُ. In other words, the area of Beth El, which is the very most southernmost region of the northern kingdom, his father Asa had already captured some of those areas from the northern kingdom, from Mamlechet Yisrael, and Yehoshaphat saw it as his duty to increase the control and his presence in all these areas. Hashem was with Yehoshaphat. Ki halach b'darchei David avihu harishonim v'lo darash leBaalim. And because Yehoshaphat followed the Torah like his forefather David HaMelech, Hashem was with him, and he did not worship Avodah Zarah. The most popular Avodah Zarah was the Baal. The Baal was actually a form of rain god worship. Okay? Ki lelohei aviv darash uvmiswathau halach v'lo chema'aseh Yisrael. So he followed Hashem and the miswath, not like the northern kingdom. Lo chema'aseh Yisrael. Vayachen Adonai et hamamlacha biyado. Hashem helped him to take complete control of the kingdom. Vayitenu chol Yehuda mincha leYehoshafat, and all of the people paid homage to him and brought him paid taxes. Vayihi lo osher v'chavod larov. It's one thing to be king, and it's another thing to be respected and viewed as the king, so that when you say something, it actually happens. So it's describing a situation when Yehoshaphat was a successful king. Vayirba libo b'darchei Adonai. This is a very unique expression. Vayirba libo b'darchei Adonai. He was very proactive and very he was not shy in terms of pushing his agendas, and mainly he's talking about the Darchei Hashem. He was trying to do Hashem's will.
Libu is his heart, no?
Vayirba libo b'darchei Hashem. He became very he had great faith in himself and what he was doing, because he was walking in the ways of Hashem. And he removed all the Avodah Zarah in Yehuda, which had not been the case before.
Bali Bo, isn't that considered like a
well, normally Gova Alev is Ga'awa, but here the expression means let me explain. Let me read the Perush that we have here, for example. here it's being said as praise, not as criticism.
Yeah, because it says Hashem.
So this expression this is the only place in the Tanakh where this expression is used.
Wow.
Here in the Pirush, the Da'at Mikra, it says, Haya amis lev b'halichotho b'darchei Hashem. V'af al pi shekol gavchut lev b'mikra hi midah ra'a, harei kan hi ma'ala gedola, ki amitga'eh b'darchei Hashem mitames losif kol pa'am. In other words, he was pushing a program of doing Hashem's will. He was constantly forging ahead. He had no self-doubt. And here it's a unique expression. So, and for example, we see one of the things that he did was, Ovishnath shalosh lemalcho, the third year of his reign, shalah lesaro leven hayil ul'ovadia ul'izcharia ul'inthanel ul'michayahu lelamed ba'arei Yehuda. He decided on a new policy to teach Torah, like public compulsory education throughout his kingdom. He set in motion a program to teach Torah throughout the land. This is the first time that we hear about such a thing in the Tanakh. وَإِمَّهَمْ هَلْوِئِيمْ شِمَعْيَاهُ وَنْثَنْيَاهُ وَزَّبَدْيَاهُ وَعَسَائِيل وَشْمِرَمُوث وَيَهُونَثَان وَأَدْوَنِيَاهُ وَطَوْبِيَاهُ وَطَوْب أَدْوَنِيَا هَلْوِئِيمْ وَإِمَّهَمْ أَلِشَمَعْ وَيَهُرَامْ هَكُهَنِيمْ. And not surprisingly, the people who knows Torah more than others, Kohanim and Levim, that's their job. If the regime, what do you see here very clearly? If the regime is not interested in disseminating Torah, the knowledge of Hashem and of the Torah amongst the people, so they don't. And if they wish to introduce Avodah Zarah, they will. But if you have a king, you have a regime that wants to teach Torah and spread Torah within the Jewish people, he can do that too. He has the power, and that's what he does. And the people who know how to teach Torah, because that's their job, they study. They work less in the fields. They have no nahala. They have no inherited land. They have small amounts of land around their cities, which are scattered throughout the country. That's the purpose of Shevet Levi and the Kohanim, is to serve as examples to the rest of the people and to teach Torah and spread Torah. So here you have someone who knows that this is what they're there for. I have to utilize these people, and I will give the order, and they will now go throughout the land teaching Torah. So they went around throughout the country, going from town to town, from village to village, teaching Torah. وَإِمَّهَمْ Sefer Torah Adonai, and they had with them a Sefer Torah. This, if you want to know roughly what year we're talking about here, this is about, I think the official year that we believe he became king. He rose to the position of the king was, I think, 863, before the Common Era, the Binyanam. Okay. So you hear, according to what it says here, they had a Sefer Torah, which is difficult for those who say there was no Sefer Torah in existence yet, right? There are all sorts of people who say, well, there's no Sefer Torah Bichlal, so this is just made up. Okay, fine, so it's made up. But if you happen not to believe that it's all made up, then it says Mefurash, they went around teaching Torah. They had a Sefer Torah, they had a Sifrei Torah, probably a number. They probably sent parties of Kohanim and Levim to different places, and they each went with a Sefer Torah. وَيَصَبُوا بِخَلْ عَرَى يُهُدَى, and they went around all the towns and villages, وَيَلَمَذُوا بَعَامًا, and they taught the people. This is what should be happening all the time, but this is the first time we hear such a thing is actually happening in Am Yisrael. It's an amazing thing. It's not mentioned in Sefer Malachim. It's mentioned here in Sefer Divrei Yamim. Vayhi pahad Adonai al kol mamlechot ha'arasoth asher sevivot Yehuda. It's interesting. All of a sudden, the pasuk switches from discussing this new policy, this new education ministry that the king has established, and all of a sudden it tells you that all the nations round about, and there were plenty of nations that we had problems with then, as today, the Moavim and Ammonim and what have you, they were all scared of him, of Yehoshafat. They were all in fear of Yehuda and the king. Asher sevivot Yehuda. They chose not to go to war. They didn't try to make trouble. I think the simple pshat of what the pasuk is saying is that when Am Yisrael does the right thing, when you have a regime that is doing the right thing, you'll see the ramifications, you'll see the outcomes on the ground. The goyim around about will somehow, the fear of Hashem will enter their hearts, and at least out of fear they will not bother you. The more you do the will of Hashem, the less problems you'll have with the nations around about. The less you do Hashem's will, the more problems you'll have. That is the basic rule of thumb throughout the Tanakh, and here it's explicitly being stressed by the pasuk. All of a sudden tells you he started teaching Torah throughout the country, and by the way, all the nations around about didn't want to start getting into any trouble with Yehoshafat. Omina Pelishtim. And even the Pelishtim, who were always a problem for the Jewish people, they also were willing to pay tribute to Yehoshafat. Gam ha'arvim, and the Arabs, the Arab Bedouin tribes that were wandering around the Negev near Beersheba, which is like the southern border of Memlechet Yehuda, they also mevi'im lothon elim, they brought sheep, etc. Shiv'at alafim u'shiva me'oth u'thayashim, and goats. Shiv'at alafim u'shiva me'oth. That's worth a lot of money. Okay, so even the Aravim, you see, if you want the trick, the simple, straightforward trick to gain the upper hand against their enemies, including Aravim, as it says here, Gam ha'arvim mivim lo min thon, is to walk in the way of the Torah, and then Hashem will make it happen. These people will not want to start up with you. Vayhi Yehoshafat holech v'gadel ad lemala, and he became greater and greater. Vayiven biyuda bironioth v'arei miskenoth, he built fortresses and cities where they piled up and stored supplies. In other words, he was also preparing for war, and as everybody knows, he who wishes to have peace should prepare for war. When your enemy knows that you're prepared for war, you're more likely to have peace. When the enemy knows that you are sure of yourself, and you have conviction of your beliefs, and you believe in what you're doing and the justice of your cause, the enemy absorbs and is aware of this fact, and it affects how they behave towards you. When you broadcast that you're unsure of yourself and you're not even sure if you're right, well then that you're just inviting the enemy to do whatever they can do.
My Ruta told me a story. He said that there was this Arab terrorist in prison, and he seen the guard eating bread, and it was Pesach, and he asked him, he said,
a famous story, yeah.
And he's like, oh, if you're doing that, we're for sure going to win.
Right, well, that's exactly an example. Nachon. وَأَلَا فَكُدَثَامْ لَبَيْتَ أَبُوتِهِمْ لِيُدَا سَرَيْ أَلَفِيمْ عَبْنَا هَسَّارْ وَإِمُوْ گِبُرَيْ حَيْلْ شَلَوْشْ مُوثْ أَلَفِ. He had a large army. It talks here about 300,000 soldiers and another 280,000. So you add up the numbers, we're talking about a very large number of he had a large armed force at his disposal. Well, we won't read all of that. Beginning of Perek Yodhet, chapter 18. Vayihi leHoshafat osher v'chavod larov. He was financially very powerful. Vayithaten le'ahav. Now you can read that and, or you can also read it but. You should read it but. In other words, however, he he married into the family of Ahab. Now, according to Hazal, Yehoshafat married the daughter of Omri, in other words, the sister of Ahab, the king of Mamlechet Yisrael.
Wow.
There they were completely non-Torah, anti-Torah, into Avodah Zarah. They were busy assimilating. And according to Hazal, he married, doesn't say here whom he married, but Hazal said he married the sister of Ahab. And it says Mefurash in Sefer Melachim, it states explicitly that Yehoshafat married his son Yehoram to the daughter of Ahab. So he intermarried with Ahab. And as we're about to see, this is a big mistake, a big problem.
Was it L'Shem Shemayim? I thought he was doing something good.
Probably. He did. Probably did. He probably did. Almost certainly did, as we're about to see. I mean, logically, yes, that's what he was thinking of doing.
Mm-hmm.
What he probably was thinking was that it's time to heal the rift between these two kingdoms, and once again reunite Am Yisrael. That was his thinking. We hear today also the same call: unity. We have to have unity. The trouble is unity about over what, for what purpose? What do you do with unity? Unity by itself is just is an empty word. It doesn't mean anything. So it says that he was intermarried with Ahab's family, and these were of the Avodah Zarah. They were involved with the northern kingdom beyond them to the north, the Phoenicians, the Phoenikim, as we know. وَيَرَذْ لَقَسْ شَنِيمْ الْأَحَابْ لِشَمْرُونَ. So, and the time came when he went to Shomron, the first time that a king from Mamlechet Yehudah went to visit, in a state visit in the northern kingdom, in the capital, the Shomron. وَيِزْبَحْ لُ أَحَابْ ثَوْنُ وَقَالَ لَرَوْ. And Ahab honored him greatly and made a huge feast and slaughtered many animals. وَلَعَمَ شَرْعِمُو وَيِسِثَاهُ لَعَلَوْث الْرَمُوث Gilad. Now the northern kingdom, led by Ahab, who was a Rasha Gadol, they had a major problem with the kingdom, another kingdom to their north, namely Aram, what today's Syria, parts of Syria. So the Aramim were constantly trying to attack and raid and what have you. He had a big problem with these Aramim, and now they're trying to unite and work together. So he says, will you come and fight with me against the Aramim? وَيَوْمَرْ أَحَابْ مَلَكْ يِسْرَائِيل أَلْ يَهُوشَافَاطْ مَلَكْ يُهُودَا هَتَلِخْ عِمِي رَمُوث Gilad. Will you come and join me in battle against my enemies, the Aramim? وَيَوْمَرْ لَهُ كَمَوْنِي خَمُوخَ وَكَعَمِخَ عَمِي وَعِمِخَ بَمِلْخَمَا. Yes, I will join you. But he believed in Hashem. He didn't believe in Ahab. So in his false prophet. So he said, "Vayomer Yehoshafat Melech Yisrael, Doroshna Chayom et Devar Adonai." Let us ask the advice of Hashem. So in other words, let's ask a Navi what we should do, if we should do it, if we should go to war. Vayikbos Melech Yisrael et Haneviim 400 ish, 400 false prophets, and Nevi'ei HaBaal. Vayomer Lehem, Hanelech el Ramoth Gilad lamilchava im ehdal. Should I go to war against the Aramim, Ramoth Gilad? Vayomeru aleh. They said, go. Vayiten ha Elohim biyad hamelech. And Hashem was, God is with you. Which is not surprising because he paid them. That's what he wanted to hear. So that's what he heard. Vayomer Yehoshafat, but Yehoshafat was no fool. He said, wait a second, Ha'en po Navi Adonai. Oh, are there no real Nevi'im left here? Can we get a real one, please? Not one of your you know, Beth HaNevuah Shel Ahav. That does interest me. I want a real Navi. Nidrosha me'otho, and I want to speak to him. Vayomer Melech Yisrael el Yehoshafat. So Ahav said to him, Od ish echad lidrosh et Adonai me'otho. There is one such Navi still here in the kingdom. Wa'ani sanethihu, but I hate him. Ki eneno mitnabe alay l'tova. He has nothing good to say about me. Ki chol yamau l'ra'a. Everything he says is against me. Hu Michyahu van Yimla. His name is Michyahu van Yimla. Vayomer Yehoshafat al Yomar Ken Amelech Ken. Don't say that. Bring him here. Let's see what he has to say. And as you're about to see, where was this real Navi? He was in prison. That shouldn't surprise you either. The guy who speaks the truth is in prison. The guy who tells the king what he wants to hear, they're living. What's the expression? Living it up. Living on the hog. Is that the expression? American on the hog. That's the American expression. So there you go. Vayikra Melech Yisrael El Saris Ehad. He told one of his servants, Vayomer Maher Michyahu ben Yula. Go and bring this Michya. Bring him here quickly. Umelech Yisrael v'Yehoshafat Melech Yehuda Yoshavim ish al kiso melubashim begadim Yoshavim bechor. And so they were where they had met in this place, this open area, Petach Sha'ar Shomron, the entrance to the capital city. V'chol haneviim mitnabeim lifnehem, and all the false prophets were busy doing their thing and saying what they were saying. V'yas lo Sidkiyahu ben Kena'ana karnei varzel. He was one of the head false prophets. V'yomer ko amar Adonai be'eret nagacheth aram ad kalotam. He made himself these horns like a ram of iron, and he said, with these you shall destroy, you shall gore and destroy Aram. V'chol hanevim nibbeim kenebu, and they all agreed. Ale Ramoth Gilad v'haslach, go and you will succeed. V'nathan Adonai beyad hamelech. V'hamalach asher alach likro lemichyahu diber elo lemor. Now this functionary, this servant who had gone to bring the real prophet, and he was in jail obviously, otherwise where they find him? He said to him, all the Nevi'im are speaking well about the king and his plans. So why don't you go along with it, what everyone else is saying? He says, no, I can only say what Hashem tells me to say. He came to the king says to him, Micha, Hanelech el Ramoth Gilad lamilchama im ehdal, shall I go to war or not? Vayomer alu v'haslichu v'yinathanu v'yadchem. And he said, yes, go, you'll succeed. But he was just saying it because he knew that's what he wanted to hear, but it was also clear that he wasn't speaking the truth. Vayomer elo amelech, the king understood this. Ahab, ad kameh fe'amim ani mashbi'acha. How many times have I told you, sworn you, I speak only the truth that you hear from Hashem. So then he said, all right. I saw all of your armies scattered on the hills and fleeing, like sheep without a shepherd. These people have no leader, let them all go home. In other words, you're not going to succeed at all. So Ahab said to Yehoshaphat, I told you, he only has bad to say about me. So Michyahu says, this is what I've seen. Vayomer lachen shim'u devar Adonai. This is what I have seen. Ra'iti et Adonai yoshev al kiso. I see Hashem sitting on his throne. V'chol tzva shamayim omudim, and all the tzva shamayim, all the angels and the servants are next to him. Al yamino wal usmolo. Vayomer Adonai mi yefateh Ahab melech Yisrael. Who will entice him? Vayal v'yipol b'Ramoth Gilad. Who will entice him to go to war and fall in battle in Ramoth Gilad? Vayomer zeh omer kacha v'zeh omer kacha. Vayaseh ruach vayamod lifnei Adonai vayomer ani afatenu. So one of these beings that he saw in this vision said, I will entice him. Vayomer Adonai elo bameh. How will you entice him? Vayomer eseh va'iti leruach sheker b'fi kol nevi'o. I will become the spirit of lies and falsehood in the mouths of all of his servants, all of his prophets, his false prophets. Vayomer tefateh v'gam tuchal se wa'aseh. So go and do what you can do. Ata hine nathan Adonai ruach sheker b'fi nevi'echa ele v'Adonai diber alecha ra'a. He says, so no, all these prophets of yours, they're all lying. Well, they were instructed to lie, as it were, from above, but I'm speaking the truth. Hashem has said that you will not succeed. All right, so I'm going to skip a little bit. And what happened in the end was, the war did not go very well. Why? It says in Pasuk Lamed, Umelech Aram, the king of Aram, Siwa et Sarei Arechev Ashalo Lemor, he said to his chariot drivers, Lo tilahamu et hakoton with hagadol. Do not fight against anyone. Ki imeth amelech Yisrael b'dor. Go and try and track down the king, the head of Malchut Yisrael, and kill him. Because once the king is injured or killed, the rest of the army will collapse. ויהי כראות שרי הרכב את יהושפט והם אמרו מלך ישראל הוא ויסובו עליו להילחם ויזעק יהושפט ואדוני עזרו ויסיתם אלוהים ממנו. Now they saw Yehoshafat dressed as a king also, and they thought he was the Ahab, so they went to get him to try and attack him and kill him. But Yehoshaphat was able, Hashem helped Yehoshaphat, and he was able to escape them. ויסיתם אלוהים ממנו, and Hashem turned them away from him. ויהי כראות שרי הרכב Ki lo haya melech Yisrael, and they saw he wasn't the real king they were looking for. He was the king of the other king. Vayashuvu me'acharav, and they left him. V'ish mashach b'keshet l'thumo, but one of the archers drew his bow. Vayach et melech Yisrael ben hadavakim uven hashiryan. He just let loose without aiming at anything in particular. He let fly an arrow, and the arrow got Ahab, and between where the different plates of armor join, there's a tiny crack that's where the arrow went in and got him. Vayomer larakav, so Ahab had been hit. Hafoch yadecha v'osethani min hamahanaki hoholeti. I am wounded. Take me out of. So the people, they won't see, the soldiers won't see that I am wounded, and they won't. Their spirit won't be broken, which was considered by Chazal to be an act of bravery. In other words, he was injured, but he was still thinking not about himself. He was thinking about the people, and he said, "Remove me from the battlefield so that the people won't see." And he stood up in his chariot the whole day. So he was bleeding out the whole day. And he died around sunset. So Ahab died. So the battle was lost. Yehoshaphat went back and returned to Yerushalayim. Yehu ben Hanani Ahuzer, a prophet by the name of Yehu ben Hanani, came out to meet him when he returned to Yerushalayim. Vayomer el HaMelech Yehoshaphat, hal rasha la'azor. You decided it was a good idea to go and help an evildoer. You think it's good to be friendly with those who oppose Hashem. And for this reason, Hashem is now angry at you. But you've also done many good things. You've got rid of the Avodah Zarah, etc. So you won't be removed right now from the kingdom, etc. And what happens later is another story, which we won't go into right now, but much later. But at this point already, you see, the Navi is telling him, you made a big mistake. You thought that unity, as we said before, unity comes before other questions, such as, are you on the same team, Bichlal? Are you fighting for the same goals, the same aims? Do you have the same purposes in mind? So from this very clear rebuke of Yehu ben Hanani, we see that we are not to work join forces with people who are opposed to the Torah, who act against the Torah. Unity is not a sufficiently good reason to act in such a way. And eventually, what happens later when we perhaps will look at those chapters later, the outcome is very negative because of this connection between the families becoming intermarried, etc. Eventually, Athaliah from the northern kingdom ends up reigning in the southern kingdom, and basically shuts down the Beit Mikdash and floods the land with Avodah Zarah. This is later. And really, in many ways, despite all these tremendous actions and policies of Yehoshafat that he's praised for, you can also trace the beginning of the end of the southern kingdom to what happened here.
Wow.
So it's a very powerful lesson. As the Mishnah says in Avot, Al tithabar l'rasha. Do not, and it says in Avot de Rabbi Nathan, afilu lidvar miswa. Even for something that appears to be a miswa, don't join forces with evildoers. Yeah.
How I know that in the Satmar magnum opus of Satmar by Yoel Moshe, one of the reasons given for not cooperating and not being part of any government here in the Knesset is lo likabel rasha. And so how would you say one takes the principle which was just conveyed and at the same time makes the distinctions necessary to not go in the Satmar direction?
I think we are only at the beginning of this discussion. This is just the first course. There's much more to be said. But you're already from here, and because it's late, we'll stop here today. But already from this alone, you see that the idea that, well, for this purpose, it's okay to join forces with those people, and we'll work together, and we'll rub shoulders with them, and we'll be on the same side, and whatever. That is. It's very far from obvious that is the correct approach and the correct policy.
Even more so, he goes overboard. He says, "Kamoni kamocha kamcha amiva."
Yeah, well,
It's not just say, "Okay, let's make an arrangement."
It's clear that he's trying to reunite these kingdoms, and he wants all the people who can be called Jews, shall we say, although Yehuda is Jews and these are Israelim, but all the people who belong to Am Yisrael, they should really be on the same side. They should be working together. He also thought that perhaps eventually I'll be able to makarev otam, I'll be able to wean them off Avodah Zarah, and they'll become more like me. But usually, as we see historically, what happens later in the Tanakh, in the following chapters, we see is the opposite. What happens is the reverse. It's not he who influenced them; it's they who influenced him, or his descendants. So there's much more to see here, and we'll look at it, B'ezras Hashem, next time. But it's certainly food for thought.
And that's between Yehudim, between Jews. Think about all the alliances that Am Yisrael is making with the Goyim today.
This is between Jews, yes. But between Jews who are faithful to Hashem. This is a king who introduced this, who set up a new education ministry. He sent the Leviim and the Kohanim throughout the land teach Torah. It's tremendous, fantastic. We don't see kings like this. And yet his downfall began when he took this step.
But even the Hashmonaim is seemingly the other approach, that they rejected the Hellenists and they were very pure. But in the end, they failed also, in that sense, and they did mix.
Well, some of the descendants of the Hashmonaim themselves, unfortunately, ended up being Hellenists also.
Yeah,
so that's really, again, that's where the downfall really can be traced to. You can't compare, of course, one historical situation necessarily to a prior or a later one.
Yeah.
But yes, but the Hashmonaim definitely saw the Hellenists, and Ahab was a Hellenist about much earlier. They saw these people as the enemy, as the people that had to be fought. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But it's also true that some of their descendants began to see things differently, because again they were influenced by all these people. In other words, it's it's very easy to say, well, we'll go and do this, and we'll makarev otam, and we'll influence them. You have to be very wary and very circumspect before embarking on such policies. And even when you want to makarev, you have to do it in a very particular way. in such a way that you protect yourselves, your families, your community, etc. You understand? It's not at all as simple as some people would like to think. Well, that's food for thought. What I would like to suggest is that from this point on, you continue to read the following chapters in Divrei Yamim, very powerful chapters, information which appears only here in Divrei Yamim, and in preparation for next time, B'ezrat Hashem. Yeah.
If you take the principle that Artit Chavil Rashafil and Bar Mitzvah to its logical conclusion, then no Jew should ever be a minister for any idol worshipper. So then what about Ezra? What about Mordechai? What about Daniel? Even what about Shmuel and Agit and Abarbanel?
I think that the Mishnah Artit Chavil Rasha, etc., is referring to other Jews. It's not referring to Jews living as subjects in a foreign kingdom, and then if the king wants a Jewish financier to help him with his finances, and by doing so, this Jew, whether it's a Mordechai or Yitzchak Abarbanel, he will be able perhaps to also save or assist the Jewish people in some way. That's a different situation. The Jews are at the mercy of these rulers, and if they can get in their good books and they can provide a service for them, for which they will be grateful, that's something which really cannot be criticized. We don't hear any criticism of that. We don't hear that Mordechai was not supposed. First of all, Mordechai, if you ask me what Mordechai was doing in the Persian court, I think he was a lobbyist for the Jews in Eretz Yehuda in the Persian court. That was what he was doing there. He wasn't a financier. He was the Persian Empire was a huge empire. You had many nations and ethnicities, and the Jews in Eretz Yehuda at that time had a huge struggle against the Shomronim and against the Aravim and against the Moavim and all these other nations that had entered the land in the absence of the Jewish people, and they needed a lobbyist in the Persian court. And that's what Mordechai, I believe, was.
Right, but afterwards, at the end, it says he became the viceroy. We also know that Nehemiah
he became the viceroy, but we don't see Yosef was also a viceroy. We don't see him being criticized for that. But if you're talking about within the Jewish world working with Jews who are not faithful to the Torah, that's something quite different. Again, it's probably not quite so simple and black and white. Maybe there are certain situations where various things need to be weighed up. But you would have thought perhaps that what Yehoshafat was doing here was reasonable. Try and unite the Jews and fight a common enemy, or if I don't help him fight Aramim now, they'll attack, they'll overrun the northern kingdom, and they'll come for me. There was some sense in it, but the Navi didn't think so.
Was Yehoshaphat the only king that had this intermarriage policy vis-a-vis the Israel kingdom?
Well, it really began at that time. It continued, but this is when it began.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.